Once upon a time, there lived Master.
Once upon a time, there lived Fenist, the bright falcon.
Master lived in Russia, in St. Petersburg, the city where most of the year is cold, and he was called Igor.
During the day, he was a simple gray bird and lived in the forest. But as soon as the night came, he would throw his feathers off and turn into a beautiful prince who would radiate the light around him and make people happy.
Master had many people in his life. There were friends and teachers and wife and son and mother and sister and his wife's sisters and parents. He lived in a big loft, and he was very busy. He had to take care of his family. It was even bigger than you'd think. Vanya, Petya, or Tutti Frutti, Dudu, Sachmo, Petrusha, Igor, Grisha, and Vasya, Yasha, this is their home. All this was called Wooden Horse Theater, and the members of the theater were made by the master. He had a little workshop in his loft. That's where all of them lived, and it was already pretty crowded there in 1994.
It's folk theater, a form that has been lost to us, and which, of course, must be revived, because it's just impossible to live without it. It's different theatrical forms. It's the theater of marionettes and the theater of Petrushka, hand puppets. It's practically any form of theater that we used to have is no longer with us. It's the balagan street theater. In general, very few people know what balagan is. It's a temporary, wandering theater, temporary buildings for a theater. It's the balagan of Petrushka, the little puppet booth theater. Then there was large-scale balagan with marionettes. But then there was also a form called virtyap, which I also do. It's a bit different. It's not balagan street theater. It's a kind of chamber theater. Of course, it's only done at Christmas, and then it gets put away in the barn until the next Christmas. Virtyap is an old Russian word that means cave. The Orthodox Church doesn't like play acting. The Orthodox Church thought that puppet theater especially came from the devil. Actually, it came to us from Catholic Poland and was developed in the lands bordering Russia, in the Ukraine, in Siberia. In the central regions, of course, it was suppressed. But in the countryside, in villages, in remote areas, they had shows at Christmas time in homes.
Спасибо за внимание. Уважаемая публика, кукольный театр «Деревянная лошадь» представляет кукольную комедию. Балаган, праздничный театр.
Balagan is holiday theater, a theater of the marketplace, a festival theater. It has a holiday atmosphere. That's the essence of this theater. I was searching for a long time. I finally found the true nature of this type of theater. I revived it for myself, not for the country or for anyone in particular, just for myself. And now it needs to be developed.
Master, a while before he became a master, was a little boy, and he would go to school and study like everybody else.
He was just an ordinary boy. When he was in the second grade, he went to music school and studied bayan. He was drawing all the time, in his notebooks, in his diaries. And his teacher would often complain and write a note to me in his diary, replace the cover, Or your son's notebook is covered with drawings.
He would draw and draw and draw, and even went to a special school for artists so he can draw and paint more.
As he was growing up, he had even more passion for drawing.
I studied in a school for creative arts and then at the Sirov Art Academy in the theater division.
In our first year of art school, in the fall, we go out of the school building during breaks to get a breath of fresh air in the garden near the Smolny Monastery. We'd walk through the fallen leaves, rustling them as we walked, kicking them with our feet. It was during these walks that we developed a kind of mutual understanding.
He came in, said hello. I turned back, and I see Igor, and here I was, madly in love with him.
And he liked to go out and toss these leaves around. And he would catch the pigeons and let them loose inside the school, and they'd be flying around.
Every night, Fenist the Bifalcon would wander to the nearest town and thought about how much he wanted to be a man, and not only at night, but also during the day so everyone could see him.
Master loved his school, and he wanted to become a painter and set designer. But then he met a new teacher.
My teacher for composition and set design was a puppeteer, Valentina Vasilyevna Malakheva.
And she taught him puppet theater.
And when they told me I should make puppets, that's what I had to do, I went along without much enthusiasm at first, because I thought, puppet theater isn't serious. Drama. Now that's serious.
And after this, his dream was only puppets. And he and his friends, for their diploma, created the set and the costumes for the puppet theater.
We took 3 plays by Carlo Gozzi.
The Raven, The Stag King, Love for 3 Oranges. We did this as Balagan Theater. Put it up, and then it just took off. Puppet theater is the creative artist's theater. In dramatic theater, either the director or the actor is the driving force. And one always wants to kind of come first, right? Puppet theater is the very place where the artist can come first and really should come first because he fashions the image and everything else.
After they finished school, they started to look for a place to start their own theater.
The 3 of us, Yurik, Igor, and I, we would take walks around St. Petersburg. In November, we roamed the streets during the dark, cold nights, through snow and slush, with Igor walking ahead of us as he always did. One night, suddenly, we came upon a children's recreation center named April and met its director. We offered to set up a children's theater there. We made the puppets, built the stage, and started preparing the show.
It was in a basement in one of the old apartment buildings in the city. When they had their first show and the audience and neighbors came, they were all surprised. We haven't seen anything like that, they said.
It was like a magical cellar. There was a theater there and musical instruments and all kinds of unique things that we had never seen before. And in the midst of all this reigned Igor.
Master loved to do theater so much that he wanted to know everything about it. So he went to a new school to study acting and directing. Then Master found a new and bigger place for their theater. It was an old building in a little town near St. Petersburg. He took his friends, and they all moved into that town.
We picked ourselves up and moved all of our things. All of our wooden treasures, our boards, our puppets, the ones we had at that time.
We got married and moved to Pushkin almost right away and lived there in the studio.
Master and his friends spent day and night in this place, working and working. They were preparing for the opening of their new theater.
I was offered the director position of the new recreation center. The place was pretty cluttered with school desks and other junk, and they cleared it out. They made one room into a studio workshop and the other into a little theater hall for marionettes.
Many people would come into this place to help. Everybody who wanted to see magic in their town.
Every day, Venus the bright falcon circled above the town and saw many people living there. There were children and parents, rich and poor, and all of them looked very sad and unhappy. And one day he felt so much for them that he thought, if I ever become a man, I'll do anything to make those people cheerful and happy.
Master did everything. He built the stage, he made the puppets with his friends, he worked as a director and the producer. He had to organize all the things for their new play.
We decided to do a play about Fenist, the bright falcon. And we had conversations over cups of tea and glasses of port. We came up with great moments and pearls. The play we wrote has no relation to the fairy tale about Fenist the bright falcon, the one from the book by Afanasyev that we grew up with. This play was born during our collaborative discussions. It included many more puppets and many more effects than it might have otherwise.
And when the show started, the magic began. The Wooden Horse Theater was opened.
Igor found a stray dog named Chucha. Igor, before each show, would come out to tell the audience about the play they were going to see. And Chucha would always come out and sit down next to him, always. And Igor would talk to the audience about the show for about 5 minutes and then would leave. And Chucha would leave with him.
I can still see it, a wonderful backdrop of gray cloth. Yes, gray. It was a little theater with just 4 rows of seats in a half circle, which, by the way, he made himself, even the chairs. A little stage, a wonderful mechanism for moving the puppets, wonderful production.
Dudu is his earliest puppet. It was the puppet from Fenist the Bright Falcon. He is a flute man through which the bad king would play, manipulate. He was a bad, repelling character and would do all bad things, but he came out very charming. Igor could not really make bad characters, so Dudu ended up as the most favorite and the most charming character. He put his soul into Dudu.
No matter what he was doing, it was never enough for him. Igor always wanted to do more, go beyond the limits of the stage. Even then, he was thinking of going out to the street and performing for people.
If I ever become a man, I'll do anything to make those people cheerful and happy. And as soon as he said that, an old and wise bird appeared. He said to Fenist, "Your thoughts are very precious, my friend. You can help people if you share with them your beauty and light that could lighten up their lives. But to achieve that, you'd have to reach the brightest star in the sky, and you have only 3 nights to do it. If you don't reach it in 3 nights, you will stay a gray bird forever." And the moment he said that, he disappeared.
It was very difficult to play many different roles in the theater, but to be a producer was the most difficult role.
Very often, creative people or artists look down on administration.
His friend said, "Hey, you aren't doing enough creative work. You don't spend enough time with us."
And with his followers, it was, to put it mildly, a bad situation, and the theater simply died.
One day, master and wife came into the theater, and it was empty. Nobody and nothing was there. Only one lonely puppet sat in the corner. Everyone left, he said. He was very unhappy. They all moved back to St. Petersburg. No more theater, master thought after he recovered. and he went to work to the office like everybody else. He would go to work every day. He would come back home after work, and he would not touch any piece of wood anymore. The puppets were put in the suitcase, and they stayed there for a long time.
He was very upset about it. He just couldn't understand how the theater could just fall apart. He was destroyed.
Master didn't want to talk about his theater, and he was always sad and most of the time quiet. Then the puppet said, "Enough," and wife said, "Enough, open the trunk," and he did. When he saw that his puppets were so lonely, he picked up everybody, and they all moved into the big loft.
If you don't reach the star in 3 nights, you will stay a gray falcon forever, the old bird said, and disappeared. How confused Fenist the bright falcon was. He knew if he didn't try to reach the star, he would still be a bird in daytime, but a prince only at night. But if he did try and didn't achieve it, he would never become a man again. Then he looked down at the people and saw that they were so unhappy and never lifted their heads up to see the sky. So he thought, I will reach that star no matter what.
He also picked up his little axe and went into the forest. He brought some pieces of wood into the house, took his carving knife, and got to work.
I told him, Igor, you could still work at the Department of Culture and still make your puppets at home. No, no, he said. I want to do the puppets all the time.
Then he joined another company of the People's Theater. It was called Classical Theater, and he played a funny part in the 19th century play called Three Sisters.
He did a lot. He did all the advertising for the theater.
Master could not stop working. His Balagan was invited to Germany. And he packed his hand puppets, a couple of marionettes, took his wife, and they all went to Germany.
And somehow we learned it in German, and we didn't understand anything.
Maybe politics played its part, because it was when Yeltsin got up on the tank on his white horse in August 1991. It was the first coup, and we had won, and 2 days later we arrived in Germany. The Germans hadn't gotten tired of the Russians yet, or perestroika, and we had a great time.
They performed in the park. Hand puppets had big success, and after the marionettes saw it, they said, "We want to perform here too."
And I know myself that when the marionettes are ready, I depend on them, and I'm only able to help them do what they do. But if I try to force them, well, they won't do anything if I want to force them.
And they got out of the suitcase, and the Russian orchestra played the music, and that was their first public success. And when they came back to Russia, Master went to his workshop, and more new puppets were born. "Good," old puppet said. "We need more actors for our theater." The Wooden Horse Theater was coming back to life, and the master was becoming a real master.
So now I just make puppets and watch to see what they want to do and help them do it.
Now he knew what he wanted. He wanted to make marionettes perform in a concert, a real gala. Each one would have their own solo number. How happy the puppets were. "Hooray, hooray," every one of them said. "I will have my very own show and my very own music."
I don't know yet what this cute couple is going to do. I see her raise her hand, and she makes a movement. And I like it, and they've already come to life.
When the night came, Fenist the bright falcon was about to throw off his feathers Then he thought that he couldn't fly up to the star without them, but he knew he had to do it. He looked up and found the brightest star in the dark sky. So he stayed on his feathers and rose up into the sky. But as soon as he took off, he fell down on the ground. Fenist the bright falcon tried to reach the star on the second night, and he rose up much further than the night before, but he fell down on the ground again and hurt himself.
Master's dream was to perform his show in his beloved city of St. Petersburg. So he took his marionettes, his son, and they all went out to the street.
On St. Petersburg Day, during the city celebration, I watched Igor on the palace square.
Look, people said. Look, puppets!
As soon as we had found a spot, racketeers would come to us and say, who's going to pay for it?
And God forbid you should stick your neck out to do carnival-type deal. The police would run up immediately with, come on, wrap up your stuff.
Meanwhile, Master played a part of Pharaoh Pont in The Three Sisters and had great success. The theater was invited to perform in America. Master was invited to go too.
When the negotiations started and Boston became a reality, he refused to go at all. He says he's not going to America because that country is alien to him and that he has nothing to do over there and not to count on him.
But when he was in Boston, he heard that nearby in Cambridge there was a place called Harvard Square. That's where all kinds of street performers would gather and all kinds of people would go to greet them.
When I first met him, I talked to him and I said, this is the place for you, for what you're doing.
Master came back home to Russia to pick up his family and bring them to Harvard Square with him. Where are we going, the puppets wondered. Where is he taking us? Then, in the summer of 1994, they all went to America.
In the beginning, it was very difficult. When we first got there, we didn't have a penny. But somehow, the way that it turned out, there was always more and more. I felt safe with him. I always felt safe with him. I knew that we would never be lost with him. He'd make things and sell them somehow. Once he painted an Easter egg and sold it, and then again, we had money.
And on the third night, Fenist the bright falcon tried to reach the star again, and it wasn't easy. But he flew and flew and flew, and the star was shining in the dark sky, and it was coming closer and closer.
Nothing could stop the master anymore. He performed and performed, show after show, day after day.
It was a fixture in Harvard Square. Every Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, he'd be over there, and everyone would come watch him again and again, bring their children or bring their friends or say, oh, I know what we can do tonight. There's a great puppet show.
What's he telling you, Sonia?
In America, nobody was interested in politics or perestroika. The fact that I was Russian maybe was a bit exotic.
Потому что так чувствуется, что о русских есть некоторый образ, имидж.
Because Russians have a certain image, the Russian bear with his paws.
А тут, в общем,
Here I was, no bear, no paws.
западный, да.
So when the show started, people would come over to him not even knowing why they were headed that way. The people would cross the street just going that way because they felt like going that way. And once they got there, they would see this concentration of goodness and happiness.
Егор, ты меня подержи на гармошке, а я тебе запою чего-нибудь новенького. Ну давай. Разбежались, разыгрались в огороде свиньи. Ванька спит себе на крыше, я ж на пианине. Тринти-бринти, ананас, красная калина. Не живет теперь у нас, а сама Марина. Моя жинка по хозяйству очень беспокоится. 3 часа козла доила, а козел не доится. Тринти-бринти, ананас, красная калина. Не живет теперь у нас, а сама Марина. Черт сорвался. Хороши весной в саду цветочки, еще лучше девушки весной.
I didn't know what he was singing about. It was enjoyable for me to hear Igor say he was singing about love and a flower is wonderful but not so wonderful as a girl. With Vanya it was so expressive and earnest, and it's like his message was so important, and he would come up to you and touch you and pat you and sit in your arms, and it didn't matter what he was saying, Vanya. How Vanya felt about what he was saying is what mattered.
And they would all listen to his Russian music and his Russian songs. Nobody could understand the lyrics, but that's what art can do to people. Bring them all together.
Я думаю, что я все-таки делаю искусство.
I think that what I do is art.
Занимаюсь.
And that's it.
Вот и все. Да.
His wife and son came to see the show every day and help him set up and reserve his spot.
There were problems with the space. Would we get one or not? Zhenya and I would run ahead in the heat, me with this big belly, and we'd sit on the suitcase waiting for Igor to come. And he'd nap a bit, get a little sleep, and then come.
Son went to school with American children, and then Anna, a little daughter, was born.
Когда мы летели, я еще была в животике. Там все по-английски говорили, даже я. And the star was shining in the dark sky, and it was coming closer and closer. And Fenist, the bright falcon, with a few very strong flaps, reached it. And the star said, "From now on, you, Fenist the bright falcon, are a great and fearless prince. You've reached your star and may share your light and beauty with people on earth." And Prince Fenist the bright falcon came down to people and started traveling around and sharing his light and beauty with everyone. And whoever met him knew that they had come upon real magic. They were children and adults, rich and poor, and what they really knew now was that they could recognize beauty everywhere after they saw our Fenist the bright falcon. как живые подходили.
He was such an enrichment to the square that this Harvard Square lacks now, because so many acts have a similar cultural background. And Igor's was so different in every way, and even as a person, just talking to him, you know, he's so stoic, but he tolerated Americans, you know, he didn't mind them.
Most of all, he liked the square. In Harvard Square, he felt he was happy.
I've worked in buildings and tried to do theater in enclosed spaces. Of course, that's also fine. But on the street, somehow there's more space. There are more possibilities.
He really missed Russia too. He always talked about how he missed Russia. He wanted to go back, but this is where his career was doing well and he was making good money and it was a better standard of living for his family. But I remember him always saying, oh, the Russian winters, I miss it so much. And this is when 92, 93, 94, the winters here were terrible. We had 8 feet of snow one year and I said, what, how could you, this winter's not bad enough for you. But he said it's so quiet there.
А Россия лежит в пыльных шрамах дорог.
Тоже видно.
А Россия дрожит.
Тоже.
От капозных сапог. Господу Богу, прощения не просит. И героям нас учат. Солдатский закон. Алло, здорово.
I decided I'm going to offer him a drink. He goes, sure. And he looked at the beer with like real disdain. He goes, what is it? Oh, you Americans drink beer. It was very Russian, and I think this is a characteristic of Russians anyway. Just from the literature that you read, and they have such a strong sense of identity and pride in their country and just the love of their land that he really had.
The roots of this art are Russian, and in spite of all the difficulties which we experienced in the Soviet Union, what he created came from Russia, and he would never be able to do what he did in any other country. So all of his art was Russian. He even used to say, I should go back there to get inspiration. I should go there, be there for a while to get inspired so that I could do more.
And 2 years passed, and the children spoke English. It was more crowded around the Wooden Horse Theater.
One time, he told me the story of how during the second year we were in America, a drunk came to his show behaving rudely. When he saw the puppets, he calmed down and sat to watch. And Igor brought the devil up to him. He became immediately sober and said, "Please, don't. I'm not going to drink anymore."
He's probably watching us much closer, you know. So we go up to the right person, the person would react. He sort of just knew who to bring the puppet up to.
Oops.
Sometimes the puppets would get tired and didn't want to listen to Master. "We want a break," they would say. Master would take a day off and the puppets would rest. He would put his family in his car and travel around. They drove into the woods because that was their favorite thing to do.
Мы ездили куда-то к черту на рога. Да.
Это вы гуляли?
По Москве куда-то туда, и здесь крутились. А ничего, такая машинёшка. У нее руль так делается, да? Вот так вот.
He was working a lot, running around driving, and so it was very stressful. You got to go and perform, pack up, and go somewhere else. And I said, you should charge twice as much. Maybe you only work half as much. You have to turn down some work, but you make the same amount of money, and it's a little less stress. But he didn't, because he wanted to make so much money for his family. He coming from Russia too, I think, to say $100 for my 20-minute show. That sounds like a lot.
They moved to a new town, they moved to a new house, they bought a new car, and they had a new child. Grigori was born in September of 1996. "Oh," Puppet said, "a new member?" "Yes," Master said, "a new member."
Я не хочу, чтобы у меня был борода здесь.
There goes back the night.
I said to Igor, you know that at night when everybody's asleep and the house is dark, the box opens up and the puppets come out and dance in the moonlight. And I just was intending it for a joke. And Igor's eyes got wide and he said, do not say that. And we all know that the puppets have personalities, but to Igor, the creator, it seems like it may have gone a little deeper.
He'd come home after performances, especially on a Saturday night, very excited. He couldn't sleep all night. He'd talk and talk. And he would create something, think, wanted to make new puppets. He would simply get up and go for a walk.
Fancy gloves, though, where's Maggie dear? So there's not a trace of red on the sidewalk. Sunday morning, the eyes of body oozing light. Someone sneaking around the corner. Is there someone back tonight?
He came back after performance and we talked. Then he took a camera, came over to Grisha, wanted to take a picture of him, then put it aside, and looked at him and said, "Look, Grisha is beginning to look like me." And then he went out for a smoke, and that was it. The police came. He loved the violin. His favorite music was Paganini's first violin concerto, and he would listen to it all the time. He would always listen to it going somewhere, while driving. You could say he was happy. He knew that he had realized himself as an artist.
Эти игрушки из Америки мы привезли эти игрушки. Все игрушки.
В Америке вот все эти годы.
In those years while he was in America, he reached his star. We would receive word from there in articles and calls, and we realized that he had found himself.
Он нашел себя.
Harvard Square missed him. It was so fast. Oh, we still have people come up and say, "Where's that one guy?" It's always sad to have to say, well, you know, he died.
Да, папа Игорь.
Папа Игорь.
У нас папа Игорь. Называем папа.
Мне интересно делать все.
I'm interested in doing everything. I'm interested in contemporary things because I'm alive now. But what comes from earlier times is even more interesting.
Это еще более интересно, потому что
It's interesting to dive into the past as if in a time machine.
машинка времени.
Вот наш птиц. На небе.
In puppet theater, there is no today, no yesterday, no tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Everything is right now and forever. Of course, everybody needs this kind of theater. My own experience has convinced me that it's needed not just in Russia, but everywhere. If it is alive, if it has a life of its own, then I think everyone will find it interesting.
Мы научились летать.
По-настоящему? У вас крылышки выросли или вы без крыльев летали?
Без крыльев, да, просто махали и все.
And Venus the Bright Falcon said, "I'll reach that star no matter what." And he put his wings back on, cleaned his gray feathers, and took off. Took off.
Сколько же, сколько же.